Welcome once again to SaharaTV, and we're here with a human rights lawyer and a senior advocate of Nigeria, Barrister Femi Falana. It's a pleasure to have you on SaharaTV once again, sir.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Still on these allegations of bribery and corruption, I mean, how do you respond to the allegations made by Darkman about your involvement in securing a pardon for Bobrisky in exchange for 10 million naira? And why did you describe the claim as infantile radicalism?
Well, I have tried as much as possible not to embark on any action that could be misunderstood when allegations are made against my person. I try to respond without losing my temper. In this particular instance, I was provoked, highly provoked. But I can always control my emotion. Members of my immediate family and the extended family were a bit worried. Because for them, you don't deserve this, but they know what I do. But I explained to them, I assure you, at the end of the day, I will not disappoint you. Because, in fact, I think I was telling my wife that all these allegations are, in the words of Shakespeare, a tale told by an idiot, full of sand and fury, signifying nothing. As a policy, we do not collect fees to write letters for pardon. It's not part of our system because we do not profit from the misfortune of other people or the tragedy of people. No. And it doesn't cost us anything. Once we identify a case of mistrial, a case of injustice, or a case of subversion of the judicial system, we intervene. We do our homework, carry out our research, and write letters. In the last 42 years of my legal practice, I have never ever demanded for a kobo to write a letter of pardon for anybody. And my work in this area is not limited to Nigeria. No. The last one, the last case of pardon that we handled, 6 Nigerians, among 20, they were brought to the Kirikiri Correctional Center in 2002 through a prison exchange program. 6 of them were forgotten in the prison. A lawyer had taken up their matter pro bono and I traveled from the High Court to the Supreme Court. They lost the case. So when their family members came to me, I studied the case. And I contacted a human rights body in Thailand where they were brought, who investigated and discovered, to my utter chagrin, that those guys were pardoned in 2017. Meanwhile, they were still languishing in Kirikiri Correctional Center in 2022. From there, I contacted our ambassador in Thailand to forward the instruments to me, because he too confirmed my finding. But he said, Mr. Falana, I cannot pass them to you directly. Why don't you go through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs? I contacted the then Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Oyama. Mr. Jeffrey Oyama, a fine gentleman, totally committed to the defense of the rights of Nigerians. And what he simply asked me, Femi, what do I do? I mean, what do you want? I said, no, I'm sending a letter to you requesting for copies of the royal pardon granted to 6 Nigerians languishing in prison custody here. He himself is a lawyer. He too was flabbergasted. He assured me that he would do the needful. And as soon as he got my letter, he sent it to Thailand. The instruments of pardon were brought to Nigeria. I did a letter addressed to the then Minister of Foreign Affairs, Interior, Ogbeni Rao Fareboshola. On the day he received the letter, he ordered the authorities of the correctional center, Kirikiri Correctional Center, to release them.
So these are just 6 among...
Only 2 of them came here to thank me, because we don't go after, those who have benefited from our human rights activity or work.
So in other words, these were just 6 among the 280 beneficiaries which you stated. And you have not collected a single kobo.
You see, under the military, in 1991, 12 young persons that the media referred to then as kid robbers were convicted in Lagos and sentenced to death. We identified a case of mistrial because they were charged with conspiracy and armed robbery. We discovered that the 12 young people did not speak a common language. Some of them are Ghanaians, some Togolese, and some Nigerians. In fact, some Beninite. So, and you must speak a common language before you can establish a case of conspiracy. We took it up. The Ghanaian chambers went to court, and the court said there was an ouster clause. The jurisdiction of the court had been ousted. So we had problems to save them. Yet we all agreed we must do everything to save the lives of these young people. I then suggested to Chief Gani Fawemi that we could go via the African Charter. He said, Femi, why don't you try? We sent a petition to the African Commission. We now file an action under the African Charter in the Lagos High Court, holding at Ikeja here. The trial judge, Justice Eniola Longe, gave an order while granting leave for the enforcement of their fundamental rights. Order that the granting of stay shall operate as a stay of action pending the determination of the suit. So we served the order, prevented the prison or the government from executing. They were going to be executed on a particular Saturday. We got the order on a Friday. So we served the order, we saved their lives. A few months later, we have the short-lived civilian government under President Babangida between 1992 and 1993. I appeal to Governor Michael Otedola as the civilian governor of Lagos State. The old man considered our application, initially commuted their sentences to 10 years. A few months later, because of their good behavior in the prison, they were granted absolute pardon. I think the next challenge, the next one, was I think in 2009. 200 Nigerians were convicted and sentenced to death in Libya. The Diaspora Committee of the House of Reps, headed by Abike Dabiri, cried to the government to intervene and save the lives of those Nigerians because there was a case of mistrial. How did that arise? The trial was conducted in Arabic, and none of the convicts heard Arabic. None of them spoke Arabic. So, we took it up by filing a complaint at the African Commission on Human and People's Rights in the Gambia. Because of the seriousness of the application. And of course, the commission will not treat my application with levity. Our application for provisional order, that is, injunction, was granted, restraining the government of Libya from proceeding with the execution of the 200 Nigerians. Nigerian government did not intervene. At the material time, the Honorable Justice Dupe Atoki, now of the ECOWAS court in Abuja, was a member of the commission. As soon as we got a certified true copy of the order through her, we served it on the Libyan government. A few months after, while we were still trying to persuade the government to comply with the order, President Muammar Gaddafi assumed the leadership of the African Union. He became the chair of the African Union. So we took advantage of that because he was going to address the United Nations on behalf of the African Union. So we sent a letter to him appealing for clemency for those Nigerians. And that since he was going to address the United Nations, he should demonstrate leadership by example. As the head of the African Union, you must comply with the decisions and orders of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. Lo and behold, Gaddafi granted our request. pardoned the 200 Nigerians and ordered that they be deported from Libya. I think the next group we saved. I'm sure you could recall in 2014, 2 sets of soldiers, totally 70, were convicted and sentenced to death for war-related crimes. In fact, specifically for mutiny. We defended 60 of them. Eventually, only 54 were charged. Another colleague defended 12. But altogether, 70 of them. They were convicted and sentenced to them. We appealed to the Chief of Army Staff. These guys committed no offense. They were asking for weapons to fight because the Boko Haram terrorists were well equipped and well motivated. Whereas our own soldiers at that time were best given 60 rounds of ammunition. And by the time the Boko Haram boys were coming, even the sound of their very powerful tools led to, in fact, some of our soldiers simply ran because they were not equipped. And so we addressed a letter to the Chief of Army Staff. Why those guys have to be pardoned? Because they committed no offense. They didn't join the army, Nigerian army, to commit suicide, but to fight. If in the process they got killed, so be it. But don't just send them to the battleground without adequate weapon, contrary to the provisions of the Constitution.
You've mentioned
again, the death sentences were commuted to 10 years. A few months later, we appealed to President Muhammadu Buhari, who granted them pardon. One general who we defended was convicted and sentenced to 6 months imprisonment and a reduction in his rank. In other words, he was downgraded from the rank of Brigadier General to a colonel. We took up his matter and ensured that justice was done. We petitioned the Army Council. His conviction and imprisonment for 6 months was set aside. But the reduction was upheld. We now petition President Muhammadu Buhari. You say, Mr. President? In fact, it was the same time we sent the petition of the 70 soldiers. Mr. President, you set up an arms procurement, presidential arms procurement panel to investigate the management of about $2.1 billion meant for procurement of arms and ammunition. Through the investigation, those who engage in the criminal diversion of the fund have been identified. Some of them had been charged before the Federal High Court. So on what ground can you uphold, can these people, these 70 soldiers and this fine army officer, on what ground can we continue to punish them? The president saw merit in our application, granted them pardon. Happily, the rank of the general has been restored as a result of the presidential pardon. The 70 soldiers were pursuing the payment of their entitlement. Since the authorities have not paid them their entitlement, we've gone to court on their behalf. Again, at our own expense. The case will come up in the court on the 9th of February. I think the last one we did, I think we appealed to the late Governor Ajimobi.
Okay. For your state.
Jibola Ajimobi, you know, Abiola Ajimobi, formerly of Oyo State, somebody in Kirikiri, had spent about 25 years, he was convicted, I think, for murder, but his health, you know, was failing, was a terminal disease, and under Regulation 12, made in 1916 by the colonial regime. If you suffer from a terminal disease in the prison, and the prison cannot take care of you, your family can apply to have you treated. So we asked the governor, please allow the man to go home. He has done 25 years. Now his health is very bad. He might die in the prison. And so the governor, against some merit in our application, and granted him pardon. The only one that came back to offer us money was the general, because he had just been paid his entitlement. He then came back to say, sir, what is your fee? And I said, my friend, why are you insulting me? You are the son of my friend. And what I mean is that his father and I were in the struggle, even though much older. So it's like charging him. I defended you. I was traveling to Abuja at my own expense. I was staying, you know, for security reasons, in an expensive hotel in Abuja, right? Sometimes I stay in Abuja for 3 days. I didn't charge you. Even with what you have been giving, you can't pay my fees. I'm not charging you. We don't charge for pardon. He and his wife couldn't just believe. I think on their way downstairs, on their own, they said, no, this is unbelievable. I think they came back, right, to give 1 million naira to my staff, but not to my lawyers. Talking of secretarial staff, you know. So we have never, ever collected a dime, 1 kobo, from all the beneficiaries of the pardon that we applied for.
Now, let me ask you, sir.
For that reason, the allegation is totally uncalled for. Totally uncalled for. Totally unwarranted.
How about the allegation that your son, Falz, is standing as a front for you, sir? How do you respond to that?
Well, you know, these guys don't know me. They also don't know my son, even though it's of their generation. He stands out for principle. He stands out for decency, and will never go out of his way to front for me. The guy doesn't want anybody to know that it's my son. When he started his musical career, he was with us in practice. He left, he abandoned practice, legal practice. He was doing fantastically well. So he said, Dad, I'm no longer going to practice law. I'm going to entertainment world. When he started, he was invited, I think, by the NTA for an interview. Right? And he was introduced as Folarin Falana. So when he came back home, he was still living with us then. His mother asked him, why are you going about calling yourself Folarin Falana? He said, what should I call myself? Folarin Falana. So that the name can open doors for you. He said, Mom, I don't want anybody's name to open doors for me. I want to open my own doors. Because if I had said I was Folarin Falana and that interview was granted, I might have felt maybe it was because of my father's name. No. Mom, the day I will be happy is when they ask you, are you fast, Mom? And when they ask my father, are you fast, Dad? So he has never gone out of his way. You can check from his friends to introduce himself as Falana's son. One day, I was at the Abuja airport waiting for my flight, and some young girls came to me. Said, sir, is it true you are fast, Dad? I smiled. So I think so. So wow. They embraced me. So when I got home, I called him. Young man, today, some young guys besieged me in Abuja and asked whether, he said, what did they ask? They said, are you fast, father? He was happy. He said, that is what I want. And called the mother to hear my story. So he will not go out of his way. And, you know, it's a bit painful. Because last year, he went for a surgery in the UK. I think, you know, he plays football. So he had a knee injury. So the operation was successful. His mother and I were coming home from Cuba. So we decided to check him in the United Kingdom, travel via London. And so we saw the young man. So please, as our contribution, no, like I said, you know, we congratulated him, you know, the operation was successful. Can we pick up the bill? He said, no, Dad, no, Mom. I pay my bill before come here. So I hope I'm not being rude. He said, no, we're happy. I told him. Then I told my wife, your son is telling you that he's richer than you. He said, no, that's not what I'm saying. But I just, you know, I mean, if I needed financial assistance, I would have told you, but I don't need it. So he's not the kind of person that will call anybody. And in any case, he and his siblings, his two sisters, regularly refer victims of injustice, victims of human rights abuse to us without any condition attached. And just recently, I was telling him in particular, you know, come, you and your sisters, you know, you just send people to us. The way you are going, very soon, we'll be sending you our bill. We just laugh over it. So he can never, because he knows it is not our practice to take money for pardon. So he couldn't have been talking about money. And if you look at that tape very well, you know, I think the guy was alleged to be saying, first I said that my father will help to write a letter of whatever, but you know Nigeria being very corrupt, we may need 10 million naira. He didn't say he was going to give me 10 million naira. In the so-called private discussion with somebody, it was somebody else who now decided to interpret the recording by now saying, oh, I'm disappointed that Falana can take 10 million naira to write a letter of pardon. Oh, I used to have respect for him. You know, so it was totally uncalled for. And if you now say, I'm your uncle, as we are being told now, why did you not put a court through? This is the allegation flying around. Is it true that you were going to, or that you had collected? Because they say I had collected 10 million naira to write a letter of pardon for a convict. Again, as I said, it is not part of our practice.
Let me get your perspective on things. You've mentioned that you will pursue civil proceedings instead of criminal charges against a very dark man. Why did you choose this route? And I'm sure you have also explored the Cybercrime Law Act in order to file charges against him. Why have you decided to pursue a civil proceeding instead?
Frankly speaking, many people, including senior lawyers, suggested that I should file a criminal complaint. So in February this year, the National Assembly amended the Cyber Crimes Act and removed all those provisions that relate to libel or defamation. So today, a person can only be prosecuted under that law if he uses a computer to send pornographic materials or statements that are capable to cause a breach of the peace in the society. It has nothing to do with protecting any individual. That is the state of the law today. So I couldn't have filed a petition under the Cyber Crimes Act because right now I'm defending 2 journalists who were charged now, who are standing trial for cyber stalking or whatever. And we have raised serious objections. In one of them, the court had agreed, yes, the law has been amended, but this offense was committed when the law was still valid. We are proceeding to the Court of Appeal. But, I mean, on a more serious note, the campaign we are leading for decriminalization has yielded fruits in Liberia, in Sierra Leone, and Ghana. Those countries, the parliaments in those countries, have put together all anti-democratic legislation, anti-press laws, all anti-press criminal laws, and repealed them. So you now have to go to court to sue for libel or slander. Now, Lagos and Edo State have also repealed criminal libel. So, from the statute book, only those 2 states in Nigeria. So, we're trying to get these laws and we're trying to appeal to other state governments to wipe out criminal libel from their criminal codes. So this is the state of for that reason. It's not that there are no other criminal offenses. For instance, injurious falsehood, false information. You know, if you give false information to about somebody to the outside world or to the members of the public, we can lodge a complaint. The only disturbing area in this scenario is the threat to me and one of my 2 daughters. Some of these guys, who I believe are mentally deranged, have dared me. If you go to court, we shall burn your office. They have also sent messages to one of my daughters that if your father goes to court, we shall kill you. I beg your pardon, in this country. I just laughed and I asked my girl, don't worry, I will take it up. I've already taken that up. Because we must also let these guys know where we are coming from. We fought against some of the most murderous military regimes in Africa. The fact that I'm alive today is Sherlock to the grace of God. You know why?
Why?
In 1992, the late Chief Ganifawa Mese, the late Dr. Bekono Somkuchi and I were detained in Kuje prisons. from where we were charged with treasonable felony by the Babangida military regime. In 1993, the three of us were also detained in Kuje prisons after we had been charged with organizing protests against the annulment of June 12 election. In 1996, Dr. Beko Ransome-Kuti had been jailed and was serving prison time, life imprisonment in Katsina. He and Shehu Sani were jailed together. The late Chief Gani Fahmi was detained in Bauchi prison. I was detained in Mawadashi prison in Jigawa State. Femi Falana was detained in Gumel prison in Jigawa State. That year alone, we were detained for 10 months. I was arrested there on 14th of February, 1996, only to be released on November 20, 1996. It will interest you that the Buhari Idi-Agbon regime, military junta, detained me and left me in prison. Babangida released me, but when he was going, he also left us in prison. Right? He left three of us in prison. The late Chief Gani Fahmi, the late Dr. Beko Ransome-Kuti and myself. It was the Chonekon contraption, the interim government of Chief Ernest Chonekon that released us. So we've gone through this horrendous experience only to be intimidated now, or only for some rookie radicals to dare me and threaten me not to go to court. Even if I wasn't planning to go to court before, I'm going to call off their bluff and to let them know that we now operate in a country where the rights of everybody must be respected. So, for these reasons, I couldn't have filed a criminal complaint. Because when you file a criminal complaint and you ask people, of course, the criminal libel still operates in Abuja. If I had gone that route, an arrest would have been made. Charges would have been filed. A conviction may be secured. So what will I gain from that? So I'm not going to report anybody for criminal libel.
Let me also get your clarification on this. You stated during the course of your recent interview that you've never had any contact whatsoever with Bobrisky. How about very Darkman? Has your chambers ever had anything?
No. Never. I've never spoken to him. I've never met him. I do not know him from Adam. No, and I'm serious about this. My son, before this incident, never told me anything about him. It was after that publication that I called him. What happened? And he said, on May 4 this year, this guy called me from the correctional center. And he asked him, are you calling through the superintendent of prisons? He said no. Say, please, I'm trying to raise 3 million naira so that I can be placed in a special part of the prison, as in the VIP section. Man said, please, stop calling me. And if you are going to call me next time, do it through the proper channel, or if you're going to write a letter, let it be endorsed. I had to ask him, right? That's right. I mean, what gave you that idea about that? you were regularly detained in a prison. So I should be familiar with the laws and regulations. So I know under the law, you can't communicate with anybody outside the prison without going through the official, channel. And if you're going to send a letter, it must be endorsed. So I was being careful and advising. I know you appeal to other people, but that was it. And that was the last time my son spoke to him. It had nothing to do with pardon, right? Because my son knows that we do not charge for pardon. So he couldn't have been discussing or negotiating. And my son has never negotiated our fees with anybody. On the contrary, he sends people here, right, for us to handle their matters pro bono without taking a dime.